Welcome back to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans for Ohio State fans. For the West Coast, I'm your host, Zach Moore. Today is Thursday, December 5th, 2024, and I'm very happy to be joined once again by fellow South Stands contributor, Paige Van Horn from Denver. PVH, how you doing, buddy?
Well, you know, I was hopeful to never use the line again.
Here it comes.
The Sloaner Classic, right? You know what it is. It's smiling through the pain, brother. Smiling through the
pain. You and me both. I mean, this is becoming an annual tradition, buddy. And as much as I love talking to you on this podcast, I don't like this tradition one bit. I mean, this is the fourth annual airing of grievances after another devastating Ohio State loss to Michigan. As a 21-point favorite, the Buckeyes fall at home to the bad guys, 13-10. Ryan Day's record against Michigan is now 1-4. And as a result, for the fourth consecutive year, Ohio State will be sitting at home during championship week watching number 3 Penn State, who the Buckeyes beat in Happy Valley on November 2nd, play number 1 Oregon on Saturday night for the Big Ten title. PVH, the Buckeyes will finish a laughable 4th in the Big Ten behind Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana. I mean, that is just... Yeah. That one hits you in the face. Now, the new CFP rankings were released on Tuesday. The Buckeyes only fell 4 spots from number 2 to number 6. If the season were to end today, Ohio State would have the 8th seed and would host number 9 Tennessee in the Horseshoe on December 20th or 21st. The winner of that game would get number 1 seeded Oregon in the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day. But a lot of football left to be played this Saturday. That's just a projection for now. The outcome of the conference championship games on Saturday could alter Ohio State's playoff fate a little bit, but it looks pretty certain the Buckeyes will host a first-round game, and fairly certain it could be Tennessee in that game. Now, we're going to have a lot more to say about the playoff pairings down the line in a couple of weeks after they're officially announced on Sunday afternoon. We're not going to go there today. Also, I do want to acknowledge quickly that yesterday was the start of the early signing period. The Buckeyes 2025 recruiting class currently sits number 5 nationally according to 24/7 Sports. We're not going to discuss recruiting today, though, either. We're going to save that topic for the offseason. Today is mostly about a re-examination of what the fuck happened in the Horseshoe on Saturday. We're going to look mostly, though, PVH, from a macro perspective. Real quick on that game, though. Last Saturday, I think we can both agree, a complete and utter failure of coaching scheme and execution. Michigan had a very narrow path to victory in this game, and that's exactly what they got. They turned it into a line of scrimmage, special teams contest. They hoped for some unforced mistakes, which they got. And then those Buckeye sphincters were tight as a snare drum heading into the fourth quarter of that game. That's exactly how Michigan would have drawn it up. We can go into the details if you want, but basically in a low possession game, Christmas came early for Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, with Chip Kelly calling those 14 dreaded interior run plays that went for a grand total of 34 yards. Place kicker Jaden Fielding missed 2 chip shot field goals. Will Howard threw 2 horrendous interceptions, one that set up Michigan's only touchdown. The other happened in the red zone that denied Ohio State points. Ohio State came into this game leading the country in red zone touchdown percentage. They had 3 trips inside the Michigan 20-yard line that failed to produce any points, PVH. And on the other side of the ball, defense played mostly well, but look, when it came down to it in the fourth quarter, when they had to get a stop, they couldn't do it. Michigan outgained Ohio State 101-10 in the fourth quarter. They dominated time of possession, 1301 to 157. Ohio State did not gain a single first down in the fourth quarter, and inexplicably, they did not target Jeremiah Smith in the fourth quarter either. And finally,
he's not in the portal yet, is he?
God, I hope not. Hapless Michigan offense goes 4 of 5 on third down in the fourth quarter. It was a staggering, stunning, shocking result. I called it on Sunday a bed shitting of epic proportions, I think was the term that I used. Yeah. PVH, why don't you tell us what you saw on Saturday? The floor is yours, my friend.
Well, and again, there's no use in going back and, re-examining every single intricacy of the game. The astonishing thing is, though, like, if they just play decent special teams, they win that game, comfortably.
Yeah.
And
they certainly win it.
Yeah, they certainly win it. And, it's going to change the complexity of the game. But I think that's one of the bigger things that's so frustrating about Ryan Day so far is that it's kind of been, and again, I'm completely off topic now because I don't even really care. I don't want to relitigate the goddamn game. We've done that. We've heard, like if you're sickos like us, we've, listened and read, and we know all the details of what went wrong. But going back to the special teams thing, is that it's kind of like whack-a-mole with him, right? It's like, okay, well, the defense is what screwed us for years and years and years. Okay, so then we finally, figured that out. And then it's like, well, he can't be the offensive coordinator and the head coach, because that's what's screwing us. So then we go out and get Chip Kelly. He's not calling plays anymore. And now it's special teams, which has actually been a constant,
Yeah.
Hasn't been great. And we got fooled into this game, thinking, oh, wow, special teams has actually become, a positive for us potentially.
That's what I thought. Uh-huh.
But that becomes a lot of luck, right? I mean, if punters don't catch the ball and you block a punt,
right.
How much credit do you really get for that?
That's true.
Yeah. And so it's just, that's the frustrating part. And, it's just like, or at least I've been joking, like maybe we can get a coach to coach the game for Ryan Day going forward for Michigan. Like, what fucking else do we need to do? What other toys, what other resources, what other money do we have to do to get this guy over the hump? And I think the sad reality is nothing. I mean, there's not many more things that we can do to get us where we want to go with currently what we have.
Yeah, I mean, this game could not have been handicapped any more than it was. No Will Johnson, no Colston Loveland. You lose Donovan Edwards midway through the second quarter. I mean, I guess what else do you need, Ryan Day? Do you need Mason Graham to go down? But I mean, you had a 5-loss Michigan team coming into your building with a walk-on quarterback and all those key players out for Michigan. It could not have been more handicapped for Ryan Day to get the win here. And if not now, then when, is my view of it. And so yeah, I'm with you in that regard. I mean, I've taken two views of this because there are still games left to be played, or a game. And my immediate takeaway coming out of this game for the rest of this season, however long that it's meant to go, I think the defense is probably going to be fine. I have a lot of confidence in that unit. I think it's good enough to win a national championship, and they're healthy. But of course, I have major concerns about the offense. Yeah. And Michigan, I think, was the first time that the Josh Simmons and Seth McLaughlin injuries really, truly came back to haunt Ohio State. That's unlikely to be the last time it comes back to haunt them, because the Buckeyes are going to see really good defensive lines in the playoff, no doubt. And I think what the Michigan game laid totally bare is Ryan Day has a developing problem with a mistake-prone quarterback in Will Howard, right? Who also can't give the offense what it needs in the vertical passing game. They just can't maximize their advantage at receiver because of that. And, let's not forget, PBH, let's tick down the list here. Howard had a pick 6 and a red zone fumble against Penn State. Yeah, he threw a red zone pick against Indiana. Against Oregon, he muffed a shotgun snap on a critical third down late in that game. And of course, we remember him running out the clock at the end of the game with a timeout still in Ohio State's pocket. And we saw another late game clock mismanagement issue against Michigan. Ohio State was on defense, but it was after the illegal substitution penalty. They try to call a timeout, and that results in a runoff. And then the other thing with Howard, back to him quickly, is I'm pretty sure the last deep throws that he's completed this season were in the first half against Nebraska. He had a 40-yard touchdown pass to Carnell Tate and a 60-yard touchdown pass to Jeremiah Smith in the first half of that game. Unless I'm forgetting one, Howard has failed to complete any deep throws like those since. I mean, that was 6 weeks ago. So if we're looking kind of a little bit more micro and what do we learn from this game against Michigan that could impact Ohio State the rest of the way? Those are two things that really stood out to me. Was there anything like that stood out to you, just in terms of, within the context of this season?
Well, I mean, it's a good point about Howard and the vertical passing attack. And then I kind of wonder about, our defenses, scheming for that. I'm sure they are. Yeah. I'm sure they're watching tape. I mean, that was one of the things I had jotted down. And when we get to it, like, where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. If Ohio State is going to pick themselves up off the mat, right? And I think we're both in agreement that, 1 win, 2 wins is probably not enough, right? For Ryan.
I tend to agree.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to have a serious run here. In my opinion, he needs to at least make the championship game.
Yeah.
I just, and I'm jumping ahead on like what I was going to,
sure, go ahead.
I had put down, but even if Day turned into, Vince fucking Lombardi, tomorrow right. and just started coaching his ass off, I have no faith in Howard to be able to be that guy to get us where we need to go. And that to me, is another issue. And it's kind of funny, right? Like the one thing you could have never, given Ryan Day any grief about is, elevating the program with the quarterbacks. But okay, we had Kyle McCord last year, and now Ryan Howard. You can't
Ryan
go
Day,
2 freaking years.
Howard,
And granted, I mean, he's got a stable behind him, but I mean, what good is that? It's irrelevant at this point. I just, it's frustrating on so many levels. And I'm not even necessarily, I'm not one of those people that, like, I know the Michigan game is important, but to me, winning the national championship is 5 times more important than beating Michigan. So like, let's play it forward. If he can pull it off and win 4 games in a row, I'll take an ass beating by Michigan every single season. I don't care. Like, I think that is the way bigger prize. My concern is I don't see any plausible way how that becomes a reality.
Yeah, I mean, if Ohio State's going to make a deep playoff run, which we all want to see, of course, and which is, way more important to you and I.
We can table that, do we?
Right. So that's the point I'm going to make here. If they're going to make this deep playoff run to save Ryan Day's hide, they're going to have to overcome the limitations of a patchwork offensive line and a mistake-prone quarterback who doesn't allow them to take full advantage of their most dangerous weapons. I mean, it was interesting. Ryan Day hinted during the press conference yesterday that they may try some new personnel on the offensive line. I mean, who else is he going to turn to? The next guys in line are really young. They played limited snaps this season. Josh Padilla is a name that comes up. He's a redshirt freshman who's played 29 snaps. They like him. They think he'll start one day at center, but he's not ready. Luke Montgomery, another guy, 77 snaps played this season. He's a true sophomore. George Fitzpatrick, another redshirt sophomore, who played 73 snaps. I don't know who you turn to at this point. So that's one major concern that has me doubtful that they can go on this run we're talking about. And then, again, at this late stage, Will Howard, he's a fifth-year senior. He is who he is, and if Howard continues to make mistakes to get fails to get the ball down the field to the receivers, I mean, who does Ryan Day turn to there? Devin Brown? Yeah. I think Brown probably throws a better deep ball than Howard, but I'm not sure what else he gives you. Well, so I'm with you. I have major doubts about him going on this run.
Yeah. Did anybody watch the Missouri game? I mean, granted, he didn't. I mean, but we've laughed. How many times? How many jokes have we made? Like, Devin Brown, you'd be a great quarterback at the University of Utah. I don't even think he could make that squad. I mean, I in jest said I would. Do you roll the dice with Julian Sane? Like, I don't know. I mean, I know that's a horrible, way to go. There's no way. But fuck, I mean, you're completely out of answers. The other thing is, back to the offensive line, right? I thought when McLaughlin went down, they would have hey, we're going to do it for Seth. We're going to rally around this, and for the Indiana game, and sure enough, they did that.
Yeah.
But at some point, this would probably come back. It's not a genius take, but at some point, this is going to come back to bite you in the ass. It did in epic proportions against Michigan, and I still don't understand what the fuck they are doing with offensive. They recruited 3 offensive linemen just in this cycle.
Yeah,
I heard Stephen Means they've recruited 10 guys in 3 years. You need to recruit 40. I mean, don't you watch Michigan? Don't you watch the NFL? Don't you watch the Detroit? Like, it's still, you go as far as your offense and defensive lines take you.
That's right.
And again, I'm sorry, it's an indictment on Ryan Day. Like, if I know it and you know it and Jim Harbaugh knows it and, Suzanne, anybody knows it, how the fuck do you not know this?
Yeah, I mean, and to go from Stradrawa, who they fired for this very reason, that he just couldn't recruit, and now you've got Justin Fry, who's got all the same problems. I mean, it's like he's building a 7-on-7 team here, right? Yeah. Hey, you're getting the quarterbacks and receivers. That's great. We're not playing 7-on-7. And you have to build depth. You have to have quality depth on the offensive line. That's what this season has shown us.
And guess what? Every football season in history has shown you the same thing, right? Like, yeah. I mean, I love the receivers. I love the skill players. I love it, but it doesn't matter, right? Like if you don't have time, if you can't, have balance, right? I mean, they can put 3 guys on them and take away the pass, and and then it kind of comes full circle. Like, well, we have to run the ball, right? So we have to have that balance, and it's like, man, this is squarely, it probably falls on the offensive line and how they've approached it. And then, the whack-a-mole with Ryan, there's always some glaring deficiency that is going to come back and bite him in the ass. And here we sit, in honestly one of the most not fun, frustrating seasons that I can remember.
It really has
based on the expectations that we had coming into it.
They did this to themselves. Right? I mean, the leadership of that team, the Denzel Burks, they are the ones that started the natty or bust conversation. As a group of seniors, too, by the way, that hadn't accomplished shit. You hadn't beat Michigan yet. You hadn't won the Big Ten yet. And, you certainly haven't sniffed the national championship. And to heap those expectations on yourself, I think if they had to do it over again, that's something they might have changed. But yeah, it doesn't seem as though Day learns his lesson, or he continues to learn them the hard way. This was a pretty predictable predicament that they're in with the offensive line. You could just look at the roster before the season started. You could see how thin they were. They had 5 quality starters, to be sure. And then beyond that, you were rolling the dice. You didn't really know what you were getting. And here, all it took was one injury. And unfortunately for them, they've had 3 season-ending injuries on the offensive line, 2 starters and a key reserve. And it comes back to fundamental stuff, right? Roster building. That's part of what an experienced coach who knows how to win does. It starts with roster building, right, PVH?
It absolutely does. And, in that narrative, right, are you building a team to beat Michigan, or are you building a team to beat Georgia? You can do both.
You can do both. You should be able to do both at a high level.
You should be able to do both. But, dude, he hasn't even – they signed 3 offensive linemen, and the kid from Tennessee, guess what? He signed with Tennessee like an hour ago.
Yeah.
So they didn't get him either. So it's just like, what are you doing, Yeah. Like, and I don't follow it that closely, but it's just like, man, so now – I guess with the portal, you can fill the holes, but
it should never be the plan, though, right? That should never be your first option. Is like, we'll just address it in the portal, right? Because quality offensive linemen are such a hot commodity in the portal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those guys aren't growing on trees.
No, not at all. It's just it's frustrating, and it's like. This one has bothered me as much as an Ohio State loss has bothered me in so many years. Like, normally I shake this shit off in 12 hours. Like, it's a football game, right? We have big boy problems, right? But I think it's just, it's so infuriating that it has lingered. And the irony is that they still have a shot, right? Like last year.
They're still, they have the 3rd best Vegas odds to win the whole damn thing still.
I know, which is kind of crazy. I wish I don't understand that. But, but if you look at the talent on the team, you could make the argument. But
of course.
I think with the head coach, the quarterback, and the offensive line issues.
Going to be tough. I mean, if you had just one of those 3 things, it'd be enough to derail your title. But those are 3 major, issues. You've got a head coach that we're not sure we can believe in. Got a very spotty track record in top 5 matchups, and that's what he's going to be facing pretty much from here on out. And then 100%. the quarterback and offensive lines that we've already outlined here. All right, PVH. Well, let me put this question to you. Let's go macro here.
Okay.
I think I know the answer, but I'm just going to put it to you anyway. Is Ryan Day the right man to lead this program in 2025 and beyond?
Man, so I guess my answer to that would be, what is the anecdotal evidence that you have to say that he is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, does he bring something to the table? Sure. Is he a pretty good coach? Sure. I go back to the fact that he was never a head coach previous to this.
That's right.
I mean, if you're writing the bylaws of Ohio State football in some book somewhere at the Woody, I think that should be a criteria, right? Like, build a program someplace else. I don't think you learn on the job at Ohio State, which is essentially what he's been doing with unlimited effing resources.
Yes. And that's an important point. I think some people forget, those that are still out there defending him.
And we had talked about this, and I just kind of remember reading about it and seeing that interview and kind of cocking my head, but never saying anything about it, right? Because never in my wildest dreams did I think that they would lose this game. But when you start talking about football as war, right, you lose me. It's not fucking war. Yeah. I've never seen a war. You've never seen a war. Ryan Day, this isn't war. This is fucking college football. Right. So stop acting like, or just please don't say that. And then he compares it to losing his dad. Dude, you're standing way too close to the Buckeye son, and you've lost perspective. He's clearly lost perspective on this thing.
I think those are really good points. I think that's really good.
And the other thing is, I think it's affecting how he's coaching. It's affecting.
No doubt.
He is, and it should be fun. And this is still fun for us, right? I mean, as much as we care, I think as much as Buckeye fans care, 99% of us understand it's just a game. It's a diversion. We love our alma mater. Yes, we want to win, but we understand it's a game. It's fun. It's how we get together. It's, how we socialize. It's all those things. Mm-hmm. And he has lost that. He doesn't look like he's having fun. The weight of the world is on his shoulders. That press conference yesterday, it's still there. Mm-hmm. And I think somebody seriously needs to pull him aside and say, dude, like, remember how you coached when we played Clemson and whatever that was, like 2019?
Man, that's like a million years ago.
Right? But you were falling out, like you wanted to. Dude, where is that guy? What happened? And I can, I think all those things have turned him into who he is right now. And, it comes full circle to, this is not the place where you learn how to be a head coach. And I think we're living through it. And I feel sorry for him because I think he's a good coach. And he might, answer your question, like, be the guy in 5 years, but he's not the guy right now.
Before I answer that question, I thought it was interesting. A couple hours ago, I saw a little clip from an interview with Josh Perry and Nicole Auerbach. And Perry, as you remember, played on that last Ohio State national championship game as linebacker.
He's really good, man. Like, I like his takes.
Yeah, I like his take as well. And he's a pretty mild-mannered guy, not prone to hyperbole. He said a number of things in the interview. What stood out to me was, his concern heading into the playoff was that he may have lost the players. Because I think one thing that did stand out to me on Saturday was that there was no lack of emotion. I think we've seen Ohio State show up a little flat for the Michigan game, but I certainly saw it on the field, the emotion from the players. I saw it out of Quinshon Judkins. I saw it out of Will Howard. There was, Jack Sawyer for sure. We saw a lot of emotion from Sawyer throughout the game. And I'm paraphrasing, but Josh Perry said in as many words, hey, coach, we were ready. We came ready to play. And you weren't. You weren't prepared. And I think we saw that in the game plan. We saw that, and Ryan Day also still has this thing about wanting to out-tough Michigan. Yeah. Right. And for 4 years now, it's just, So my answer to the question is Ryan Day the right man to lead this program in 2025 and beyond? I think definitively the answer is no. He's a nice guy. He's done some good things at Ohio State, as we've talked about, elevating the quarterback play. He's mostly upheld the recruiting standard from the Meyer era. No off-the-field nonsense, right? That would be embarrassing for the program. I talked about a little bit about this on Sunday. But he's making $10 million fucking dollars a year. And his last win over Michigan was 5 years ago. His last Big Ten championship and CFP win were 4 years ago, PVH. And this season, we've talked about it, he had the best roster in the game with the best prep player in America and the best player from the transfer portal. He had a blank check to hire any assistant he wanted, including his boy, Chip Kelly. And the Buckeyes finished fourth in the Big Ten this season. Fourth. The few remaining Day defenders are going to point to his overall winning percentage. I talked about this on Sunday. But look, and we talked about this, PV. At Ohio State, there are 9 guaranteed wins built into the schedule every fucking year. And
I could win 9.
Right. And beating Penn State and Notre Dame, look, that's not nothing. Those aren't easy games to win. You and I were at that Notre Dame game last year. That was a dogfight. But Ryan Day's predecessors, Cooper, Tressel, Meyer, they all dominated those games too. He's not doing anything those 3 coaches didn't do. So, I mean, I think the only outcome that saves Ryan Day, we've already talked about it, is at least getting to the national title game. Short of that, it's time to give fucking Mike Vrabel a call. He's available. He's having a gap year up in Cleveland as an overpaid analyst. Get it done. I don't care what it costs. Money should be no object. There's plenty of money to get it done. If you can always go out and get more, bite the fucking bullet, take the short-term losses that come with a coaching change. Some kids are going to transfer out. There's no avoiding that, of course. But Ohio State has never had a problem getting great players. They'll get more great players. Okay. But I bet most of them stay if you get the right guy in there. And for fans that are worried about a drop-off from Day to the next guy, look at the last 3 coaching changes at Ohio State. The transitions went just fine. Day went 13-1 with the Big Ten title and a playoff berth in 2019. Meyer won his first 24 games after taking over in 2012, and Jim Tressel won a national title in year 2. Hell, you even go back to Earl Bruce in 1979. He went 11-1, taking over for Woody Hayes that season, and he came within a point of winning a national championship as a first-year head coach. Fans forget that. It's just coaching changes at Ohio State typically go pretty well. The only one that didn't really go well was Bruce to Cooper, but that was an outlier. And I'm not counting the Luke Fickell interim season of 2011. That doesn't count. When Ohio State makes a commitment to a new head football coach, history has shown us the transitions typically go really well. Yeah. So, I mean, what's stopping you at this point if Ryan Day falls flat in the playoff, right?
Well, I tell you exactly what it is. It's fear. Yeah. Right? It's fear of the unknown. It's fear that Smith is going to get in the portal. Guess what? He probably will. Okay, fine. So you lose Smith. This is Ohio State, right? And this is the part that drives me crazy is that, to your point of, 8 or 9 wins are baked in every season. Guess what is also baked in? 15 4- and 5-star recruits. They just want to fucking come play there.
Totally.
Right? So
you got that block O on your chest when you walk into living rooms, right?
Exactly. So it's eerily similar, like where you've got this great coach just kind of sitting out there in this weird limbo with, Vrabel and, the same thing happened with Meyer. But, dude, even if it's not Vrabel, the fears, well, who do you go get? I mean, come on. There's got to be 10 guys out there that have built programs, i.e., oh, hey, look at Indiana. Take a guy that's actually done this before, turn the team around, understand what it takes. And, to sit there and say, well, he's a good coach and there's nobody, or there's not potentially anybody better out there is absolutely ludicrous. Yeah. There's tons of candidates out there. As long as and the other thing is, I don't know why. I don't know. I've resisted this concept for 30 years of my life, but for some reason, he's got to have some tie to Ohio. He just must, or even Michigan.
For sure.
I don't care. There's just something to that. I don't understand it. It's cosmic, but it's a thing.
It's in your DNA, right? It can't be explained. It just is.
It just fucking
and it works.
Is. I am finally there. And then the most hilarious thing I heard, and it's pretty true. It was from those. I was going to say freaks, but those guys from what's it called? High Street Freaks.
The High Street Freaks, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, and I don't even think they were quoting somebody else, but they said to compare Ryan Day to John Cooper is actually a giant disservice to John Cooper.
Right.
And because John Cooper inherited a mess.
Yes, he did.
Ryan Day inherited a fucking Maserati.
Yeah, he did.
Dude, you're turning this into a mess. Now, he has time to turn it around. He can do it. And I don't want this, and I'm bummed Plummer isn't on because I knew this would be me and you being negative and Plummer would fight back and be positive. And I don't want, because there are games to play.
Yeah. And we could talk about that.
And I think we should, maybe turn the narrative around. But he he's driving this thing into the ground. And so the last thing I want to say, here's a question for you. If you strapped up Ryan Day to a lie detector, what percentage of his body would you say I actually fucking want out of this?
Oh man, I would say 80%.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. I mean, if you watched him walking around in a complete haze
Totally.
After that game ended and before then when the fight happened over the flag planting, he looked like a guy who wanted, like, if I could snap my fingers and tesseract the fuck out of the stadium, I would do it right now.
Anywhere.
And to me, and so that, I think that's also on the table. I think it's on the table that he leaves of his own accord. Though he was asked about that in the press conference yesterday, and he gave the answer that he thought everybody wanted to hear, which is that, no, it's one of the best jobs in America. I love it here. But you can't look into him. You don't know what's in a man's heart and his head, but just that moment there after the game, and that to me looked like a defeated man, somebody that just wanted out. I mean, is that how you feel? What would your percentage be?
I mean, he might be altruistic. I don't know that he's going to leave $30 million on the table.
Right.
Like, I think you'll make him fire him, but I think there would be a sigh of relief. He'll have generational money. And he can go someplace. I mean, it's not like your career is over. You can, it's a learning experience, right? And again, I don't fucking like bagging on Ryan Day. It's no fun.
Right.
So like Jen said, this is no fun. None of us want to do this.
No, we want to be talking about a Big Ten, but we want to be previewing the Big Ten championship game tonight.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
exactly. I just think, And again, like, who fucking anointed this guy to begin with, right? Urban Meyer did, who was not making great decisions. Anybody remind you? Like 2018, 2019?
Yeah.
Like, why was he the heir apparent? Like, you just don't give the keys of this car over to a program with this much pressure to a guy that's never done it before. You don't. It's a recipe for disaster. We're living in it. He's got an opportunity to pull it out, but those seem to me to be very, very long odds.
I agree. I think the odds are long. I think he's got a long road to hoe, and he has some real deficiencies on offense that we've already talked about that are going to make it really a real challenge for him, to win out, to run the table. But, they are still one of the most talented teams in the field, even with the injuries that they've had. Vegas seems to still really like them. This isn't the Sunshine Pumper podcast, right? And I understand. I appreciate Chad's positivity but this isn't that moment for that, and we can do that another time. Look, when the playoff pairings are announced and we know exactly who else High State's going to play and what the playoff bracket looks like, we can have a different conversation with a totally different tone. But I mean, listen, this isn't. We didn't want to be having this conversation, and Ohio State put us in this. Ryan Day, you put us in this position of having to have this conversation, and you're not meeting your own stated goals. That's the other thing. We're not imposing these goals on Ryan Day. Ryan Day will tell you they want to beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and compete for national championships. And by their own stated goals, they're not achieving them. And it's now going on, four straight seasons of that. Yeah. And I just think you have to hold the leadership accountable here. He's making $10 million a year. This guy is generational. Whatever happens to him, he's got generational wealth. He's going to be just fine. And so that's just my view of it. All right, PVH. Yeah. I thought before I let you go today, we could have a look at a couple of the conference championship games, the SEC and the Big Ten title game. But before we do that, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is I pray that they don't have a home game. I want them out of Columbus.
Yeah.
I number one, like, I just think schematically this team is built for a track meet, right? In a December game, it just doesn't work for us. I mean, you can look at the last four Michigan games. That's part of it, but that's only 25% for me. I want them away from the noise. They might be angrier in a hostile setting.
Yeah.
And it looks like they're going to get a home game. I hope it works out. But man, if I would go on the road anywhere maybe outside of Oregon,
right,
and play that game just because they're too close to it. And I think that would, maybe motivate them. And I was listening to, Carpenter and Schlegel, and they're like, oh, it'd be so great for the seniors to have one more game at the shoe. I'm like, fuck that. You've had your chance, right? Like, right. You need to do something different.
Yeah.
Be away from the shoe. I know that we can't control it, but that would be my, big sort of wish as, they unfold and lay out, the playoff schedule.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a scenario that would force that, but I see your point. And it is ironic, right? Because, in most years, you're Ohio State.
Yeah.
You're an Ohio-based university with mostly Ohio players. You should be able to take advantage of weather like that, circumstances like that. But as you pointed out, we're built like a 7-on-7 team, right? We'd rather play indoors on a fast track and take advantage of our skills. So it isn't, I don't think, even against a Southern team, which it sounds like it most likely will be, it might not be the advantage that we think it is, because Ohio State is built a little bit more like a Southern team roster-wise. And then, getting away from the noise. I think that's a good point. Especially when things start to go south, things in the shoes start to tense up, the sphincters start to tense up, and it's almost as if the home crowd works against them.
Yeah, I mean, dude, there wasn't much of a home. I mean, they were booing. But whatever. We can't control that, but that would be my wish. And
I'm with you.
And then if they could get one. Okay, well, so let's just transition, because I feel like we're transitioning.
Okay, so we are going to shelve Ohio State's playoff future for another pod once we know what the pairings look like, and also where they're situated in the bracket. Maybe we can project forward a little bit. In the meantime, there are some interesting games happening this week, and I'm certainly going to tune in because I'm a freaking junkie. Let's start with the SEC title game. Number 5 Georgia versus number 2 Texas in Atlanta. This game is a 4 p.m. Eastern kick on ABC. The line is Texas minus 2.5. The over-under is 49.5. Now, these teams met on October 19th in Austin, and Georgia won that game. They handled Texas pretty well. The Georgia defense dominated 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. And that game was not a Mona Lisa on offense for either team. The Dogs and Horns combined for 7 turnovers that night. None of the quarterbacks looked great, including Carson Beck. He did not play particularly well. Georgia held a 23-0 lead at the half, held on for a 30-15 win in Austin. PBH, how do you see this game playing out?
Dude, I mean, I get Georgia wrong every week. Yeah. So your guess is what team shows up?
Right.
So I guess if Georgia loses, they're out, right? I mean, are they in the bracket?
I tend to think Georgia is in win or lose. I think that the participants in both of these games are in win or lose. They will have 3 losses, but I mean, if you look at what they did, right, they got a win over Texas, a win over Ole Miss, a win over Tennessee. I think Georgia is in, but they would have 3 losses. I think where it benefits Ohio State, and if we're looking at this with, through our scarlet and gray colored glasses with Ohio State's, benefit in mind, I think we want Texas to win and force that 3rd loss on Georgia, because I think we would jump Georgia. I think we'd get a better seed than Georgia, I believe.
Yeah. So it's and this is the fun part of the new system and the brackets, and I think there'll be a post-mortem as far as, man, is it really in your interest to make the championship game? I mean, God, imagine that, right? Like, like coming full circle, Ohio State pulls off 4 wins, right? And it's like, maybe the formula is not to play in your championship game, which, at some levels, makes some sense, right? I mean, just from wear and tear and guys potentially getting injured. That game only being, what'd you say, 2.5?
It's 2.5. Texas is the favorite, minus 2.5.
Yeah. Well, they should be. It just kind of speaks to who knows what Georgia team comes up. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I would. Okay, if I got to choose, I'm going to take Texas.
Okay.
But I mean, I could see Georgia winning that game easily. Texas hasn't looked that great.
No, who have they beat, right? What's their best win? I think A&M last week. I mean, they had the road win over Michigan, but, Michigan turned out to be what they are, although we couldn't beat them, but Texas did. I'm going to be rooting for Texas, but I think Georgia, I mean, look, the other thing is they're playing in their home away from home, fucking Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. I know they've lost games there before, SEC championship games, but... And they already have a win over Texas, though it is tough to beat a good team twice. I think Georgia gets it done. I hope I'm wrong, because I think it benefits Ohio State for Texas to win the game.
Yeah. Well, that's what we should have, is we should have the cheat sheet of who we actually should be rooting for.
Right. We need to put together a South Stands,
right.
championship rooting interests.
Totally. Because it's effing confusing, right? I mean,
yeah.
And again, for seeding, I guess any improvement in seeding makes Ohio State more likely to have a home game, which is counter to what I just said. So,
I mean, I would personally rather have, I don't know, I mean, if you could avoid, playing an SEC team in the first round, even if it's not Georgia, that would be preferable. Okay, one more game I want to have a look at, buddy, and then I'll let you go. This is, of course, the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis, the game that fucking Ohio State should be playing, but instead it's number 3 Penn State versus number 1 Oregon. This game is an 8 p.m. Eastern kick on CBS. The line is Oregon -3.5. The over/under is 50.5. Now, these teams did not play during the regular season. Now, Oregon star receiver Tez Johnson returned from a 3-game absence last week against Washington, so the Oregon offense should have its full complement of weapons for this game. PVH, how do you see this one playing out?
So this one, I really, really, really want Penn State to win, because if Ohio State's going to make a run, and as the bracket stands right now, I think Oregon is the one team that you probably don't want to play until the very end.
Yeah.
It's only, dude, that line kind of surprised me. I think Oregon gets it done, but I definitely think Penn State has more than a puncher's chance for sure. But, man, I kind of feel like Oregon's skill players will be too much for Penn State and actually win this, but I'll be definitely rooting for Penn State.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So if I'm looking at the projected bracket now, what would happen if Penn State beat Oregon? They would still be on Ohio State's side of the bracket, only Penn State would be the second round game for the Buckeyes after their first round game. Oregon would go to the bottom of that bracket, more than likely as the 5 seed, I would think, because they'd only have one loss. Then you would have to beat Oregon to get to the national championship game in that scenario. But I'm with you. I'd rather see them later rather than sooner. Though it would be cool. I mean, I think if you are going to see Oregon in the second round as the Big Ten champion, as Ohio State, it would be in the Rose Bowl, which would be kind of cool.
And if you're going to get it done, right, which is what we want, right, we're not interested in winning one playoff game, right?
That's right.
Ryan Day isn't, we aren't his fans, like it's national championship or nothing, so you're going to have to go through them, so I guess it doesn't really matter, but anything can happen, right? So if you can maybe push it off a little bit, that might be best. But I think indoors, Oregon ultimately ends up getting it done, but it'll be a good game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Oregon in this game, and I was surprised to see the line at 3.5. I guess Oregon does have to travel over 3 time zones to play this game, and as we know, that's been a tough ask for a lot of teams that are in this new Big Ten that have to travel that much. But Oregon has been able to handle that pretty well, I think. So I thought, but I thought Oregon actually would be a little bit more of a favorite in this game. I'm with you. I just don't know if Penn State's going to have enough offense to keep pace with Oregon. I think it's a good game for a while, but I actually like Oregon by a couple of touchdowns in this one. Penn State, again, not enough offense. And look, we're talking about James Franklin against another top 5 opponent. The guy's dreadful in this situation. I think he's got 1 win out of whatever it is, 14 or 15 tries. So I like Oregon, and I think Oregon wins it comfortably in the end.
Yeah, you're probably right.
All right, buddy. Well, listen, that was a fine effort considering the circumstances. Why don't we end things there? For our listeners, check your feeds in a couple of weeks for a preview of Ohio State's playoff opponent. Until then, thanks so much for listening, and go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
You've been listening to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast. Follow us on X at South_Stands.